I rise in opposition to this conference report. This compromise stands as an example of why it is counterproductive to negotiate with hostage takers. Initially, the Republicans insisted that to keep the FAA up and running, we make union elections as unfair as possible. For instance, they said that if a union election, we should count anyone who did not vote in that election as a no vote. Members of Congress immediately recognized that none of us would win those elections and none of us would be here today, and if it's unfair for us, it must be also unfair for the workers of this country. The Republicans gave up that demand thanks to the Democrats. The rule providing for fair elections is protected. But instead of succeeding at making union elections unfair, this conference report makes these elections difficult, if not impossible, to hold at all. This report contains numerous statutory changes, not rules changes, but statutory changes that will make it harder for workers to get an election and to have a voice at work. A voice at work, a fundamental right granted to every worker in this nation by the laws of this nation. And these changes will require an act of Congress to undo. The compromise leads to absurdities. Under the election rule, the rule, which is safe for the time being, workers need a majority of actual votes to win in a union election, and that's fine. But under the conference report, to even hold an election, workers must first get a majority of all of the eligible workers to sign cards supporting the unions. These are nationwide units stretched across the country. You don't have access to all of these workers. You don't even know where many of them are. And in the airlines, many of them may have been furloughed for a number of years. Imagine if a congressional election was run this way. To get on the ballot, you first need a majority of all of the voters in your district to sign cards saying they supported you, but you didn't know who those voters were and you didn't know where they lived. None of us would be elected. I asked for 30 seconds.
I yield the gentleman an additional minute.
None of us would be elected under this requirement. In fact, there probably wouldn't even be an election. And once again, we wouldn't run under these conditions. We wouldn't participate in election under these conditions, and yet we're insisting that American workers have their elections rigged in this fashion. And at this point, especially when you see how it might work in airline mergers, there again, this rule works against the workers in trying to assemble the election unit. Mr. Speaker, I cannot support this bill. It undermines the rights of American workers for no purpose other than to satisfy the ideological demands of the Republicans and their special interest backers. I urge my colleagues to join me in defeating this conference report.